Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, in Nigeria, almost 800 people are rounded up as part of a crypto romance ring. Many were foreign nationals who targeted victims from around the world, luring them in with promises of love before tricking them into investing in crypto scams. Also, the world's biggest humanitarian crisis is in Sudan, and yet humanitarian drives are struggling to raise the amounts needed in aid to make a dent in the desperately needed caused by the conflict. The UN's Humanitarian Assistance Office says that it's indicative of a global difficulty in raising emergency funds. And Nigeria's Ademola Lookman and Zambia's Barbara Banda have been named Africa's Players of the Year as the Confederation of African Football holds its annual awards ceremony in Morocco. But first, 792 people have been arrested in Nigeria as part of a raid on a crypto romance ring. Many of those taken into custody from the site in Victoria Island were foreign nationals, including 148 who were from China. Now, the scam targeted victims around the world by developing romantic relationships with their marks via social media and then manipulating them into buying fake crypto investments. Samuel Okoye tells us more.
Operatives of Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crime Commission seized computers, phones and vehicles in the raid that led to the arrest of about 800 suspects. The unprecedented arrests were made in a 7-story luxurious building in an affluent Lagos neighborhood. Besides Nigerians, foreigners from China, Philippines, Kazakhstan, Pakistan and Indonesia were also arrested. The foreigners are said to train the Nigerians on how to use social media to scout for potential victims, offering them lucrative businesses. Once the potential victims show interest, the foreigners take over the deal. The victims are usually convinced to transfer money for fake cryptocurrency schemes and other non-existing businesses. People in Europe, the United States, and Canada are the usual targets. There are suspicions that this crime is linked to organized international criminal groups. Only last month, more than 100 foreigners were arrested in the capital, Abuja. The foreigners, who are from China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brazil, Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand, were involved in a similar crime of using Nigerians to perpetrate international cybercrime. It is unclear if foreigners are now targeting Nigeria as a fertile ground to recruit youths to help them facilitate international crime. With a large population of unemployed youths, Nigeria is a good target for foreigners who want to recruit them for international crime.
Sam Olukoya there for us. Now, Namibia's state telecom provider suffered a huge data leak after it was targeted by hackers in a ransomware attack. The ring suspected of being behind the cybercrime is known as Hunters International. Telecom Namibia says that sensitive customer data was released after the company refused the hackers' demands. About 500,000 pieces of information were reportedly stolen, including personal and financial details belonging to senior government officials, some of which were leaked onto the dark web. The company said that it is working on minimizing any further exposure and told customers to change their passwords. Well, DR Congo's filed a criminal case against Apple, accusing its European subsidiaries of illegally using blood minerals in its supply chain. Now, Kinshasa says that the tech giant knowingly bought supplies from conflict zones. The complaints against Apple have been lodged in Paris and include allegations of war crimes, laundering, forgery and deception.
A Silicon Valley giant accused of covering up war crimes in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Congolese government alleges that Apple's supply chain is contaminated with blood minerals smuggled by rebel forces. Lawyers for the government said the scale and duration of these activities have caused unfathomable harm and suffering in the civilian population in parts of the country. The eastern part of DR Congo is rich in precious minerals like tin, tungsten and tantalum, which are essential for manufacturing computers and smartphones. Some artisanal mines are exploited by armed groups that have been connected to massacres of civilians, gang rapes, and looting. The United Nations has condemned the exploitation and export of conflict minerals. The DRC's lawsuit also accuses Apple of misleading commercial practices, although the brand says it's monitoring its supply chains.
Although Apple does not directly purchase, procure or source primary minerals, we are committed to meeting and exceeding internationally accepted due diligence standards for primary minerals and recycled materials in our supply chain.
Judicial authorities in France and Belgium are now set to decide whether to investigate the complaints further and bring criminal charges.
Now, the coordinator of the UN's refugee response to the war in Sudan has said that the international community does not truly grasp the seriousness of the crisis. The UNHCR has received just 30% of the $1.5 billion needed to support the millions of people who've been displaced by what has become one of the world's biggest humanitarian crises. But beyond Sudan, from Ukraine to the war in the Middle East to Ethiopia and South Sudan, it has become increasingly difficult to raise humanitarian aid amidst a global landscape featuring multiple emergencies calling for international solidarity. The UN's 2024 appeal has only been funded 43% by donors, and next year, 47.7 billion estimated for 190 million people across the world facing urgent need is unlikely to do much better. More than half of those meant to be supported with drives like that are in Africa. I'm joined now by Jens Lerche, who is from the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Jens, thanks so much for making the time to speak to me. Now, first of all, I spoke a little there about the scale of the crisis in Sudan. When you're faced with difficulty that profound, the humanitarian assistance that you work to raise, how does that help? What's the money for, and how much difference can these appeals make?
Indeed, it's interesting that you mentioned Sudan, because Sudan is going to be the largest single appeal that we have in the world next year, over $4 billion US. I think for those about 14 million people inside Sudan who have received some sort of assistance, humanitarian aid during this year, it matters that we raise the money. Of course, our job is to provide humanitarian aid. A lot of it, including in Sudan, is life-saving. It is food, it is water, it is shelter, it is protection for people. So those who receive it, of course, for them it matters. For those who do not receive it because we are underfunded, then for them it matters even more.
So clearly you're making a big difference to those to whom the aid is making it through. But the big picture, the humanitarian crises themselves, these appeals come thick and fast. The crises themselves drag on. Do you think that there should be or could be some kind of evolution in the way that global solidarity is expressed in offering support to regions like Sudan facing crisis?
Absolutely. What we're trying to do at the moment is some sort of a reset of the world's relationship with the most vulnerable people in the world. What we see is these humanitarian appeals are not, as many think they are, short-lived. In and out, save some lives, and then we move on. In actual fact, the average length of the time that we stay in these countries is 10 years. 10 years. And why is that? There is an intensification of crisis where we see climate emergencies coming on top of conflicts. That means that for a family, they not only do not have enough to eat or clean water, they also do not have health care, and they do not have education for their children. And we are left as humanitarians to hold the bag, if you like, when all of this happens. And that's why these appeals grow longer and longer in terms of time that we have to stay, and the needs of the people becomes deeper and deeper.
So when you're considering the increased impact that extreme weather events are having, how are you factoring that into your plans going forward to consistently adapt humanitarian assistance being offered to the needs that you find?
Well, there are ways where some of these climate emergencies can be predicted. Data on climate has developed enormously in the past years, so we are pretty sure that we can predict where the next big drought, for example, is going to happen. So we try to front load the funding, we try to front load the aid so that we can provide some assistance before the disaster hits. But we need action on more areas than just the humanitarian. We need political action to solve the conflicts. We need climate finance to look at the longer term resilience of these countries that are very, very vulnerable to climate change. And we need development actors to step up hand in hand with us as well, so that we get the schools, we get the healthcare and so on in place in these countries. But at the end of the day, the bottom line, international solidarity will still need to step up, and we do need our life-saving humanitarian appeals funded in full.
Thank you so much for that breakdown. Jens Lurker there from the United Nations Office of Humanitarian Assistance. Now, at least 34 people were killed in Mozambique by Cyclone Chido. It made landfall in the Cabo Delgado region on Sunday, where 28 people lost their lives. The National Institute of Risk and Disaster Management has said that 3 victims were from another province in Nampula, another 3 in Niassa, and the cyclone also cost 7 lives in Malawi. Nigeria's Ademola Lookman and Zambia's Barbara Banda have been named Africa's Players of the Year. The accolades were handed out in Marrakesh as the Confederation of African Football met for its annual awards ceremony. Keris Garland has us more.
Ademola Lookman.
Capping an exceptional season for club and country, Nigeria forward Ademola Lookman took to the stage to collect his award, that of African Footballer of the Year.
This award today is a blessing to me, to my family, to my nation, and to be recognized as the best player in Africa is something incredible, and I'm extremely proud of.
Lookman proved indispensable for the Super Eagles in the 2024 Africa Cup of Nations, scoring decisive goals in the round of 16 and quarter-finals. The 27-year-old also helped his club Atalanta win the Europa League, scoring a hat-trick in the final against German side Bayer Leverkusen.
Barbara Banda.
Taking the top prize in the women's category was Zambia's Barbara Banda. She shone at the Paris Olympic Games with 4 goals, helping to make her the top African scorer in Olympic history.
Let me take this opportunity to say thanks to God. That has not been easy for me.
The 24-year-old striker also plays for Orlando Pride in the United States. Her 13 regular season goals and 4 in playoffs helped the club win the National Women's Soccer League for the first time.
Well, congratulations to both of them. That is, though, all we have time for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, though. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.